Why do you need a product strategy? What is range appeal? How do you plan a range, price a range, and increase gross profit?
Let's find out. It's all about the product. Welcome to CultureShop.
Okay, so why do we need a product strategy? Product strategy is really important because it helps you set out what your shop's all about and what the merchandise offer's all about, and have a really clear rationale about why you're selling the things that you sell.
So we try and keep a link to the museum in some way or another. We're quite lucky, we're the Museum of the Home. So finding a tenuous link to themes of the home is quite straightforward. So we can have homewares, we can have products with images from the galleries, we can have related items. But for example, one of our failures that we tried was to do some furniture retailing. So we worked with a partner to bring in some 1950s mid-century furniture, which was actually very similar to the pieces that were exhibited in our 1950s, 60s living room. But there was just no interest in sales. We think in retrospect that the price points were maybe too high. Through our experiments, we've definitely learned that for higher price point items, there needs to be a really strong story attached to it. When we've brought in items at a high price point and they're just here, such as these angle poised lamps, they are beautiful and they look great and people respond well to them, but they don't necessarily buy them. If we bring in, as we did during the Makers of East London pop-up shop we had some beautiful stools that were handmade by a local girl who's a third generation upholsterer in Cana. She created these new stools using unusual materials and they were priced over £200 and we sold them all in a month because it was much more evocative, because people got to feel like they knew the designer, they knew the story, it was more relevant, it meant something, and it also felt much more unique and bespoke for them, so they felt like they'd really got a souvenir for life, like a real investment piece.
So the product strategy within that overall context is very much about defining what your merchandise offer is going to be all about. And I suggest it's something quite simple. You can write pages and pages about it, but really just one sheet, one side of A4 is probably enough just to start off with. And it's kind of what your vision, your aims, your strategic objectives. So for example, some of the very common aims that many museums and galleries and cultural leisure attractions have as part of their product strategy is to be selling merchandise which is relevant to the entire experience, which reflects the experience. Because after all, most museums and galleries have got the most amazing collections, so why not use those? They create a point of difference for you. One of the other great mantras, I'd say, is that most shops have too many lines in them. And it's strange but true, but actually less lines often equal more sales. It's also about the different kind of categories. So your category mix is another really important thing to look at. So making sure that you haven't got too much apparel and not enough stationery or not enough pickup lines. And behind all of this, another mantra is always thinking about who your customer is, who is your target market, who is going to buy that.
But as far as our range planning goes, we have a few different sectors, so we always look to have products that fulfill different briefs. So there's our kind of core ranges, which are Jeffrey related products, so things that are either branded or directly speak about one of the exhibitions. We do a lot with London and East London, so local history and tour books and guides, lots of things about the area. That's always very popular. We do a focus on East London crafts and makers, so we always have some products in that have actually been made by small local industries and young design companies, and we do try to look back to the origins of the museum of being a champion of those makers and encouraging the next generation of craftspeople in the area to be inspired.
Grab a pen and notebook. Here's Selena's guide to choosing successful products for your shop.
One of the most important things is thinking about your product selection criteria, and they can be very simple. First one I'd suggest is that every item has to make margin. So you decide what your margin is for books, for stationery, whatever it is, or maybe you just have a global gross profit margin of 50%, perhaps 40% for books. Secondly, it has to fit into one of the ranges which you've developed. So you want to avoid having orphan products, and by that I mean products which don't fit into any one range, they're just kind of on their own. And these are not necessarily in order of importance, but your third selection criteria is that it's going to appeal to at least one of your core visitor market groups. Another or fourth selection criteria is actually about the look and the feel of the object. Does it actually feel appropriate and right? Another selection criteria you could perhaps be thinking about is the supplier and what their minimum order value is. And generally, unless there's a really good reason to do otherwise, I'd avoid one item, one supplier. Another selection criteria you might be looking about is where the item is made. So in terms of if you've got a policy or if you want to be buying most of your merchandise in the UK. And the other very important factor to think about is how well made and how well designed the item is. I guess particularly with visual arts museums or decorative arts museums, manufacture and the visual appeal of something is very important in terms of what the collections are all about. So it's also about having things which are well printed, which are well colour matched. And lastly, perhaps one of the other selection criteria, a very important one I'd suggest, is about perceived value for money. So that's not about being cheap, it's just about a perceived fair exchange. So it may be something which is £35, but if it looks very good value, it looks like it's worth £35, rather than selling something which is £50, but actually it looks like £35 worth of value, that's obviously a no-no. So it's just about thinking about the perceived value of the item that you're selecting as well. So those are some of the selection criteria I'd put to you. I don't think you'll necessarily want to use all of them, but and there may well be others that I've not spoken about for you to add to that list, which are relevant to your organisation. But I think if you get those selection criteria agreed and signed off with your colleagues, it does create a much easier framework within which to work, and it also makes it a lot easier when you get unsolicited suppliers and samples being sent in, because you can actually refer back to your selection criteria. You don't necessarily need to share the content of that with the person, but you can just say it doesn't fit in within your overall strategy and your selection criteria.
It's our best sellers in terms of volume. Definitely greetings cards. We churn through a lot of greetings cards, which is why we've developed our own range of Jeffrey greetings cards. We get through a lot of Jeffrey branded products at the lower price point, so a lot of stationery, notebooks, pencils, the kind of add-on buys, little bookmarks and travel card wallets. They're always very popular. For our higher price point items, it's actually teapots, one of our very best sellers. So I guess this was quite an interesting discovery of a bestseller. It's actually the teapot we use in the cafe to serve the tea, and people were asking for it. So we bought some in on a test run. It was actually quite tricky because again, it's quite hard to get them into the UK. So we did have to do quite a lot of research and found a supplier in Germany that ships them over for us. But they did very well, went straight into our bestsellers, sold out. We bought in 10 times as many. They all sold out even quicker than we'd imagined. So now we place very large orders, and all of these stock cupboards you see underneath will be filled with teapots when the order arrives, and that will probably only be a 2-month supply of teapots. So, and also the weird thing with these is the more we have out, the more we sell. The more space we give over to it, the more it makes it, it's like we're saying, this is what you should have, this is what you need to buy, and people respond really well to that. We do also sell the tea they have in the cafe as well, so you can replicate your Jeffrey Museum experience at home.
Join us again next time as we continue our look at the buying cycle.
We'll look at the 5 key stages of buying for your shop and hear why there's truth in the old line, turnover is vanity, profit is sanity.
See you next time on Culture Shop.
All the best.
Bye.